Hello, welcome to the Road to Retirement. I'm your co host, Tony Shore, and I'm here with our host, the man with the plan, Zach Padden. Zach, great to see you again.
Good to see you too, Tony. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah. Well, it has been a few weeks. And, I love the title of the show, or the name of the show is Road to Retirement. And people might think, retirement, I'm only 45, or I'm only 50, or I'm only 55. I'm not retiring until we're all on the road to retirement.
Yeah,
It
no,
applies to everyone, right?
yeah, no matter where you are, you're starting on that road, and you just got to make sure you make the right decisions along the way.
Right, exactly. And that's why we're here. And I know you have a lot of great advice, tips, and strategies for our listeners and viewers out there. But first, I have to ask you, Zach, since it's been a few weeks since you and I have done the show together or talked, how have you been? What have you been up to?
I've been good. Life has been pretty easy working on retirement plans with tax season coming up. It's the perfect time to review everything, but we're hot and heavy into tax season here and
Yeah.
first year doing taxes here, so it's been a
Oh,
fun adjustment.
it's your first tax season with Brookside?
With Brookside, it's my
'Cause
first
it's
one, yes.
I know with Chris, and Tony, it's like, I remember I've been doing the show with Chris for years, and, he would never be able to do the show during tax season because he's working, like, 16-hour days, and, you guys have a lot of tax business along with your financial planning and your estate planning. And Chris wears all three hats. He's an attorney, he's a tax professional, and he's a financial planner. So you guys are busy there. I know that. But Zach, I was talking about you personally. Put aside Brookside. What have you been doing, Zach? How have
I
you
have
been?
been good. I've been playing pickup basketball again, getting back in shape.
Oh,
I
wow. Good for
round
you.
is a shape, I know, but that's not the shape I wanna be right now, so we're working on getting back in shape and
Sure.
playing basketball, and I haven't finished my New Year's resolution yet. I made it past quitting day.
Oh, I made it past quitting day too. Yeah, that second Friday of the month or
Yeah.
whatever it is of January. Yeah, I'm doing good too. I'm not drinking any alcohol. I am dieting. I am eating better. So
Oh.
I'm trying to lose weight. I want to remind, speaking of weight, I want to remind our viewers who are watching the show that the camera does add 100 pounds. I just want to remind them that
Yeah.
the camera adds 100 pounds. It's much better in person, I'm sure.
That's they're lucky we don't do a live show because I mean,
Yeah.
everybody would just love it.
Both of our faces are so thin and pronounced cheekbones, but the camera adds so much weight you can't really tell.
Yeah, they need to work on that, getting us better cameras.
They do. AI, pretty soon AI will be able to make us you just press a button and say AI enhancement and it'll
I'm
drop about 100 pounds off me.
It's probably there, we're just not tech savvy enough for that one.
Right. No, we're pretty tech savvy, but Zach, that's good. I'm glad you've been doing well. So today, what are we talking about on the show?
Today, our big issue is aging parents. Now, we get a lot of people coming in. This isn't saying your parents are all in their nursing home years. Your parents could be in their 50s, 60s, and you just want to make sure your parents have everything in play. And it's sometimes hard to discuss that with your family. A lot of people are private and they don't want to discuss this. So, big thing today is just going to be talking about issues that pop up, things we see that you should try to get ahead of to help your parents in their future.
I think this is good. I have a lot of personal experience with this. My father is 81, my mother is 80, and they both have Parkinson's. My
Mhm.
mom's been in long term, full time care for 2 years. My dad we finally got him moved into assisted living next to the same facility where my mom is. So that's a good thing. So I have aging parents. I'm actually part of that sandwich generation where all my kids are adult kids now, and one has finished college and is married. The other two are finishing up college. And so, but they still need help from mom and dad. So we're feeling the time and financial strain going both directions. And I know a lot of people deal with that. And this show is as much for the parents who are aging and in retirement or getting there or maybe entering long-term care, those who are listening, and for folks like yourself and myself. Once you get into that age range where your mom and dad hit their 60s, there needs to be open communication is what you're saying to help with this, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, my parents and I have a really good relationship where, like, I know where their stuff is. I know everything's set up correctly. My dad's an attorney. He's
Oh,
taking
that's
care of a
good.
lot of this stuff. A lot of people don't have that luxury where I could know exactly where their documents are, who to talk to
Sure.
if something happens, where they bank, who's their investment advisor. Parents don't want to talk about this with their kids, and it's something that does need to become more of an open forum at some point where your family can at least understand where stuff is if something happens to you.
Yeah.
Because wishes are, we don't know a lot of times what people want.
Right. Yeah, that's true, and I saw that happen with my dad's family when my grandfather passed away, my dad's dad, Grandpa Bob. He lived to 101, but he did not like discussing finances or personal things with uh, anyone. And he was a great guy, very friendly, very tight knit family, but not communicative. They didn't communicate well. English, very quiet and stoic.
Yeah.
And you don't talk about your feelings or your money or things like that. So when he passed, he had set up a will, he had gotten an attorney, but the attorney was not knowledgeable about how the best way for him to pass along his farmland and things like that. So it's very problematic. And I just saw, and I saw my dad and one of his brothers still aren't speaking to this day, and they were a tight knit
Mm.
family. And that's tough, isn't it? I mean, just because it could have all been avoided had they sat down and communicated.
So,
Once he hit 90 or 95, I mean, he was active up until 101,
yeah,
so
this isn't
or
saying
100.
if your parents are in their 50s or 60s, be like, hey, I know you're dying. Go look at, let's talk about all this.
Yeah,
It's things that you just want to make sure that you're thinking of to help them because don't ask your parents how much money they have. Be like, "Hey, where do you bank at?" Things like that that are gonna make it easy. You don't need to know balances, but we need to make sure those accounts are titled correctly so that if something does happen, you can help them.
yeah,
You have a power of attorney set up so that if they go to a nursing home, they can't make it easily to the bank. Can you go to the bank and help them set up their accounts, set up direct deposits, all that stuff?
yep. Yeah, that's what I did with my dad, and so I saw what happened with my grandfather, plus I've been doing the show with you guys,
Mhm.
and I've gotten all the tips, so I kinda knew what to look for, so I was able to set everything up for my mom and dad and help them and go with them and get the powers of attorney and their will and a trust put in place. So I'm thankful, and it's really because of the show, co-hosting the show. I had no knowledge before that, and the experience of seeing the mistakes, right? And you guys see everything, right? You've seen it all.
Yeah, and that's the hard part here is some people will just go to, I don't know, I'm gonna say a criminal defense attorney to do their estate plan because that's the person they know.
Yeah,
And if you just need a basic will, we all learn how to do that in law school, but that's not always what you need. They're not gonna know the ins and outs. Just like if you get a DUI, you're probably not gonna select me because that's not my specialty anymore.
right.
You're gonna look for that person who's in that niche field of what you actually need.
Yeah, and there's elder care attorneys and estate planning attorneys who specialize in this and know how to deal with things like, okay, how's long-term care going to be paid for? What do you need to do with a will or a trust to ensure that all your money doesn't go there and some can still go to your family, right? Or you don't lose the family farm or business because of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of family farms get split up over the years growing up in Southern Ohio because of a dispute between families.
Yep.
And their siblings, some of them think that I want to take over the family farm. And mom and dad were just like, okay, you'll take it over. Well, that's not what their will says. It's split equally. And the sibling that moved away maybe doesn't want to have anything to do with it. They want to put it on the market.
Hmm.
Can they afford to buy their siblings out? All these things come into play, and it's questions that you need to be thinking about
Sure.
if your family has any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's important. So, we're covering the gamut. You started with communication, but also then enhanced planning, which is wills, trusts, powers of attorney. Those are things you need to communicate with your children or your parents, depending on your situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at any time, if you're above 18, you should have some kind of estate planning documents. I'm a believer in that no matter what stage of your life, you got to have something in place just because your family needs to know what you want.
Yep.
And if your parents are at that age where you're like, they need to have something and they maybe didn't update it except when you were a little kid, talk to them about like, hey, when's the last time you looked through this? Because a lot of times people come in, their power of attorneys are passed away. Their executors are no longer available. Their kids still have guardians and they're in their 40s. It happens a lot where it's out of sight, out of mind,
Yeah.
and you need to review and update these things throughout your life. I mean, mine still shows my parents as my backup guardian to my wife, which is what I want right now. But if something happens to one of them, I'm going to have to go in and update my documents to make it reflect what my plan should be.
Sure. Sure, and, yeah, that was the situation with my parents, Zach, is that, they still had "Oh, we want my cousin Wanda and her husband to be your guardian if something should happen to us," when I was a kid, and they still had that will and
Mhm.
that paperwork in place, so we went in, did everything, and they had gotten powers of attorney, but they hadn't, set them up correctly, and um, it's interesting. I'm an only child, so I didn't have
Mhm.
to deal with the sibling. But would you say I have a question for you, Zach? Let's say you have 4 kids, adult kids. You're getting older, or you're in your 50s or 60s, and you want to go set up powers of attorney or estate plan or a trust. Don't you think it's a good idea to have all of the family members, your spouse and your children meet with the estate planning attorney so you're all on the same page? Or would you say that's not a good idea?
There's 2 ways to go about this. I think you
Okay.
either go all in, so all your kids, all your family, or just you and your wife, or just you.
Uh-huh.
Because if you start bringing in 1 or 2 kids,
Oh, yeah, no.
who's to say that then they don't get favored a certain way and
Yep.
it leaves the other kids feeling left out,
Yeah.
which then can lead to
So
family issues down the road.
all or nothing.
And that's kinda my view. I have one brother who does listen to our podcast, thank goodness. Hey, Jacob. But he and I have talked about it, and our parents have talked to both of us about it, where it's like, "Hey, here's where stuff is, here's what's gonna happen," which is a good thing because we're all on the same page. Now, if they
That's
just
good.
told him and didn't tell me, I'd have hurt feelings about that at some
Well,
point in my
sure.
life.
Sure.
And my
And I
dad
assume
has
he's the
the
one that got he's the one that got the looks?
yeah, he got the
You got the
looks.
Jacob got the looks, you got the brains? Is that what happened? Or
I think he got it all. He got pretty
I'm
lucky.
I'm razzing you, Zach.
But, like,
But
my dad had 4 siblings like you brought up, and
uh-huh.
my dad's an attorney, my one uncle is an accountant. They kinda took the forefront, but my grandparents made sure all the brothers were aware of the situations,
Sure.
which was a good way to do it so that there wasn't any contention later, and if there was, it could be brought up when they could still make changes and adjust it.
Okay. So the all or nothing, but I assume that at some point, and from what I saw, I would think that, yeah, if you and your spouse want to go in, meet with the attorney and set it up, I think that is great. Like you say, that's important. But then at some point, you have all your kids, not just one or two, or you have the whole family together at some point, and you go over it and say, this is the attorney we met with who did these documents. If something should happen, that's who you talk to.
Mhm.
And here's the way it's going to work. If I pass, my spouse will get this. If we both pass, here's how it's divided. Any questions, any comments, any concerns, and then you air it all out, get it done. Right?
Yeah, a lot of people have done that, and some people say they do it on, like, holidays, which I don't really like just
No, I wouldn't
because
recommend that.
it's a positive time, we're
Hmm.
doing all this fun family activities, don't bring the mood down and be like, "Hey, when we're gone, here's what it's gonna look like." It's good though to address it with your family
Yeah.
because even we have people come in, "Well, did you know where my parents banked?" Did when we take notes down, so we do have some of that information to help them, but it could have been 10 years ago they came to us, and who knows if they opened the new account. And there's a lot of things that change over the years that you don't always tell your estate planning attorney because some
Right.
people put these documents in their desk drawer. and they call it a day.
Yeah.
And that's not the best way to do
And
this.
they might forget to bring it up in their annual meeting with you or the next time they meet with you.
Exactly, and that does happen. I mean, if you ask me what I had did yesterday, the full day, I'm gonna forget something,
Sure.
let alone for a full year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's why constantly, regularly updating and reviewing all your documents and making sure you're communicating with a financial advisor. And I think that brings us to a main point, which is don't do any of this without working with professionals, an estate planning attorney, and you need a financial advisor who's going to look at the overall picture, healthcare needs, long term care, retirement income, and how does that fit in with your estate planning, right?
Yeah, I mean, these things go hand in hand, and that's our approach here at Brookside and Selmo and Company is that hand in hand approach, which we see the benefits of. You want to make sure that your estate plan matches your financial goals with your healthcare goals, and having somebody like Chris or myself and other Tony working with you can really help the situation
Yeah,
because you want to make sure we all are on the same page here. It's not one side's doing something that's not going to help the other.
right. Right. So, any other issues or tips you have for our listeners out there with when for aging parents, issues with your aging parents?
Talk about healthcare. So one of the big
Healthcare.
things that we see, and like you're probably seeing with your parents, is they're not always able to hear the doctors or understand the doctors. Have your kids start coming to some appointments with you if you start feeling like you're not catching all the details or you're not getting all your questions answered, and put that person as your first power of attorney. That power of attorney should be your advocate if you can't advocate for yourself. So in that situation, you want to make sure whoever is your power of attorney knows your wishes, your goals, and what you really want. You don't want them to say yes to something that's against what you believe.
Well, true, and I would agree with that. That's true, and they don't. My dad and my mom deal with that all the time, especially my dad. My mom, she's in full time care, and they take good care of her. She's in a great facility, and she gets a lot of personal attention. And they coordinate with the doctors, and they have regular meetings about her health. And I am, if I'm not there in person, I telecommute in online. But my dad, he still has doctor's appointments that he goes to outside a lot, and he gets confused. He doesn't always tell them what he needs to when he's
Mhm.
there. He's not. He just doesn't communicate that well. So uh, I have to try to be there with him or make sure somebody, my cousin's there. I'm an only child, so it makes it a little tougher. I enjoyed Zach being an only child for many years, very
Yeah.
advantageous. But I always enjoyed it and said, no, I like being an only child until now that mom and dad both need full time care. Now I wish I had three sisters.
Yeah, somebody else to help jump into the situation.
And
That's
you
tough.
notice I didn't say brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's always that. But yeah, that's healthcare is a biggie. I mean, that's probably been my biggest struggle with my parents.
Yeah, and as much as we talk about financial needs in this podcast, we talk about the goals for retirement financially. Healthcare is almost more important. It's you have one life. We can always make more money. We're going to spend money. We're going to lose money, but you got to make sure that your life's taken care of and you're having the right people there to help you. My wife is a pharmacist, and 2 years ago, I had a 2 week hospital stay. I got really sick, and she was probably the best advocate for me besides my parents, but she knew the lingo. She was there, knew what I wanted, knew how to communicate to the doctors when I'm laying there feeling like crap. She was the person who could then jump in and be like, no, this is what needs to be done. And she could communicate with the doctors for me. And if it wasn't for her and my parents, I mean, I don't know how I would have got through that situation.
Yeah. Well, sorry to hear. I didn't realize you were that sick. That's too bad. I didn't
Yeah,
realize you were
luckily
not
now,
feeling well.
I mean, besides the camera adding this 100 pounds, I'm great.
Good.
I've got great doctors who helped that me through that situation and a great support system, and I think that's a big part of this is you gotta have the right support system, and
Yeah.
if I just wouldn't know what to do without them.
Yeah, and you need to be that support system. If your parents, you need to be that support system for your parents or your kids. So, there are so many issues that come up as we get older, and I'm glad you're addressing some of these today.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing is it can happen at any age. We say this happens at old ages, but it happens at all ages.
That's
Things can
true.
happen, car accidents happen. People fall on the ice out here in Cleveland today.
Oof.
Things can
Yeah.
happen and you want to make sure your stuff's in order so that if something does happen, you're protected.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And now, before we wrap up the show, I have to ask. The show is going live Super Bowl weekend. Number one, will you be watching
I will
the
be.
Super Bowl? Okay. And is there one team over the other that you're going to root for?
I'm rooting for Philadelphia
Okay.
just because I do not want the three-peat, but the joke I've been telling is the NFL scripted. So Patrick Mahomes will get his three-peat and Travis Kelce's going to propose to Taylor Swift at halftime. It's just going to happen. The NFL wants it for ratings, but I would like to see Philadelphia win just because I think Saquon Barkley's had a
Yeah,
great year and I'd love to see him win.
Saquon Barkley is one of the best players in the league. I will say that, yeah, I don't have a dog in this race, and I'm not. Uh, I'm torn. At first, I'm like, I'm not even going to watch because Philadelphia turns me off because of their fans.
Mhm.
They have the worst fans in the league, unfortunately. Typically, I don't want to insult anybody out there,
No,
but
I'd agree with you.
they're mean, and they have that reputation. So I'm not always a big fan. As a Vikings fan, I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm a Vikings fan. So you're not used to rooting for the Eagles. Kansas City, I don't mind them, but it's just been there, done that, and it seems like they get so many breaks. I will say though, Andy Reid, I think they will win, and one of the main reasons they do keep winning is because of coaching. And if they do win, I think unless the refs it'll either be because of Andy Reid's coaching or the refs or Mahomes' combination of extreme talent and luck. Um,
Yeah.
he has talent and gets lucky. He hasn't his stats aren't great, but he does just somehow manage to pull off crazy plays. And I think though I've watched some Chief games this year, and I think it's Andy Reid's coaching
Andy Reid is just a mastermind of a football coach. I
yeah,
mean,
I
you
think
see
he's
some
the
of the
best.
schemes.
Yeah, yeah, I think he's the best there's ever been maybe as a coach.
It
Um,
also helps him, I think Patrick Mahomes is so versatile.
he
I
is,
mean, you
yeah,
see him make some
true.
of these throws and it's like, where did that come from?
Well, he was being tackled and he's parallel to the ground and he threw a sideways intercept or a touchdown
Yeah.
reception. I'm like in a game, I'm like, now how does that happen? That's
Yeah, and
just
then in
crazy.
Cleveland, we can't even get a quarterback to complete a pass to our receivers right now.
Well, you
So,
notice I hadn't brought that up. We weren't going to
thank you.
bring that up. Cleveland rocks, but wow, the football team, the Browns. I don't know.
We're in a rebuild. Myles Garrett requested a trade. Not a good look for the Browns right now.
No, it isn't. It isn't. As a Vikings fan, I can't really brag. We did have a good season, though.
You had a great regular season.
Yeah. So anyway, thought I'd talk a little sports because it is Super Bowl weekend. But great show today. Aging parents is a huge one, and everybody feels the pain of this. But you know what? You don't have to. You don't have to stress about this if you're working with a great team. And I'm not going to name names, Zach Padden, but I know a guy that you could talk to that can help you with this. Zach, how can our listeners and viewers get a hold of you out there?
Yeah, so they can get a hold of me at www.anselmolaw.com or reach us at our phone number, which is 216-485-1040, or they can reach our friends at Brookside Tax and Financial Services at 440-886-3550. If you call either of those numbers, you'll be able to connect with myself, Chris, or Tony, and we should be able to help you with your needs.
All right. Well, that sounds great, Zach. Good show today. Look forward to doing a few more shows with you here during tax season.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be you and me here for a little while, so people are gonna get sick of us, hopefully not.
Oh, no. Hopefully not. I don't think that can happen, Zach. Well, Zach, great time today. A lot of good information. Listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Road to Retirement with our host, Zach Padden.